Hey guys, it's AlphaCuber. Today I'm going to be teaching you the LEOR or LEOR speed-solving method. I believe this method has a lot of potential and could be the best method for OH, one-handed solving. I also think that it could be decent for two-handed as well, but it's currently very undeveloped. The first public tutorial on YouTube, I believe. And it's also very underdeveloped and very underused. I think I'm one of only less than 10 people in the world who currently use this method. I've been using it for about 4 months for one-handed. I'm currently averaging about 25 seconds one-handed, and about 17, 18 two-handed. I don't really practice it two-handed at the moment. Yeah, I'm going to go over a quick overview of the method, and then I'm going to go a bit more in depth with the steps. I'm going to assume you know how to solve the cube with CFOP. If you know Roux or ZZ, some aspects will be easier. But if you know beginners or you don't know how to solve a cube, this will be hard to follow along. If you want to know more, there's a LEOR Discord that will be linked in the description, and I'll also link to a few other tutorials that will help you with some of the concepts. So the steps of the LEOR method are left block, EO stripe, right block, and then last layer. It actually stands for left EO right, which is why left block EO right block, which is why it's called LEOR. The first step is solving a left block or a first block, like in Roux. So if you know Roux, you can just do this already. So you solve a left block using less crappy block building techniques. This is very inefficient, but you solve a left block 1x2x3. You then solve EO. If you don't know what EO is, that will be explained later. It's the and you also solve DF DB. So you solve EO and you get a 2x2x3. That's definitely the hardest part of the method. The next thing you do is you block build the right side using only RU moves, which is very fast because R and U moves are fast. You then have last layer, and the cross will always be solved. So top solvers will use ZBLL. Personally, I use CLL, EPLL. But here I've got anti-soon case, and the CLLs aren't good, so I just do OLL, PLL. So first step is solving a 1x2x2x3 left block, first block on the bottom left. This uses block building and is fairly efficient once practiced, and it solves a lot of pieces, so it's a good first step for any method. I'm going to be showing you how to do it on this scramble. It will be on screen as well. So when you're building your first block, if you already do Roux, you can skip this step. Firstly, I advise being X to Y color neutral. This essentially means you solve any block with the yellow or white as your bottom colors. This has benefits of being very... This has the benefits of giving you a lot of different options, so it's quite efficient, but it's not too hard for recognition, like full color neutrality would be. The first thing you want to look for is pairs. There actually aren't any pairs here, but a pair would be something like this. So either like a pair on the bottom, which is like a block, or also like an F2L pair, like that. So then what you want to do is you want to see what one move pairs can you make if you have no pairs. So here I can see I can do an R2 to make this into a one move pair. Then this can be used to do the red-white block or the green-white block. So here I can see that if I position this on I can see the red-white block. The edge can be put into place with a D2 if I position blue on the front and white on top once I've done the pair. And then here you've got to get it to there. Now if you're from a CFOP background, you won't be used to this, but there's two options. One is hold it like this and do LF, but that requires a rotation. What you can instead do is do R wide F, and then you can pair it up to make a 1x2x2. Your final thing is you want to make a final pair. Now in CFOP you would do this case like that to pair it up. That is like pretty inefficient. What you can do here is you don't have to worry about any of the bottom pieces or anything. So you've got a few options. One is B prime R2, because if you see if you do a B prime, it's an R2 away. Another, which is better, would be B prime M2, because then that's just a B2 away from going in, because you can use the M slice. If you can't think of any like way of inserting them, what you can do is you can bring both pieces to the top. They're already here, and then just rotate the corner so it's oriented. You can then hide the edge with an M, and then do either a U2, or if it's here you can do a U and do an M prime to pair them up. And then to insert it, you can just do U2B. Or if you were holding it if it was at the front, you could do like an F move or something. If you had like this case, you could do U2 F prime and things like that. If you want a more in-depth tutorial, I'll be linking Kian Mansour's full video, full first block video in the description. With first block, you just want to do a lot of solves and like slow solves, focusing on different ways you can block build and do this step. It's a very intuitive step. So for EO, the first thing I have to do is I have to show you how to recognize EO. If you've done ZZ, you can skip this bit, because it's the exact same essentially. But otherwise, you can do this scramble that's on the screen now, and then solve the first block. I will make this easy and not rotate, and I won't be bothered too much about efficiency, so I'll just do R, U prime, R prime, R wide prime, F, U, B2, U prime, B. So then once you've got your first block solved, you then want to orient the centers. Now this means either matching the centers with the first block or making them opposite. So you bet this will either already be done, or you can do it with an R or an R prime. I'll do an R in this case. So it's the center is oriented because it's opposite the first block, the centers. But doing an R prime, that would also be oriented. So then what you want to do is you want to look and see if the edges are oriented. For yellow and white edges, firstly, if they're on the D layer, they will match up with either the same center, they will either be match up with the correct center or be flipped from the correct center. So here you can see it's flipped from the correct center, or the correctly oriented center. So either the correct one or the opposite one. So here you can see either that if you flipped it, it would be next to yellow, which would make it correct. This one's already correctly oriented because it matches up with yellow, which is the opposite one. But this one doesn't match up with this one. The yellow edge doesn't match up with yellow or white, so it's misoriented. And here, this one's also misoriented because it needs to be flipped to match up with the correct or opposite center. And then on the top, we can look. That one's correctly oriented because it matches. That one is not because it needs to be flipped. And that one's not because it needs to be flipped to match up with the correct or the opposite center. You then, if for yellow or white edges, if they're on the side, basically what you need to do is you need to see if I do an R or an R prime, will it be matched with if it's in one of these two positions. If I do an R and R prime, will it be matched with the correct or the opposite center? So here, the correct or the opposite center would be yellow or white. And if I do an R, it's flipped. Or if I do an R prime, it's flipped. So you can kind of do this in your head. And you can do the R and see if it was in this position, would it be correct or would it be flipped? Another way you can look at it is, do I need to do any F moves to solve this edge? Here you do, because there's no way you can do it with moves that aren't F moves. So you would need to do an F or a B move to flip to solve the edge. So that's how you know it is misoriented. With non-yellow or white centers, with non-yellow or white edges, so ones that are... Oh, by the way, if you're doing a different colour on bottom, obviously it won't be quite the same. But for this, I do yellow or white on bottom, so that's what I'm referring to. So for these edges, the ones that don't have yellow or white in them, these two, you have to work out if they're on the R layer or basically, do they match up with the side centers? So here, you can see, to match it up with the red center on the side, it would need to be flipped. So this is misoriented. This one matches up with the side, or the one of the side centers, so not the correct one, but the opposite one. And the opposite ones are fine, because it's red and blue, and it matches up with the orange, so that's fine. So that is correctly oriented. So you don't have to worry about that, but this one is misoriented. So when we look on it, we then have to count how many bad edges to work out how many we've got. So here, this one is misoriented because it needs to be flipped, so that's one bad edge. This one's correctly oriented because it's on the same, it's matched with the opposite. This one's misoriented because it needs to be flipped. And then this one, misoriented, because if you do an R, it's flipped. This one is misoriented because it doesn't match up with the side center. This one is oriented because it doesn't need to be flipped. This one is misoriented because it needs to be flipped. This one's misoriented because it needs to be flipped. And this one matches up with the side center, so it's oriented. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bad edges. The case is if you have something like this, you have to either do a U move or do a U move in your head to see whether it matches up with the side. Because if you do if you do a U prime, you'll see it matches up. But if, say, you had this case where it's here, if you do a U move, you would see it's not matched up like that. Okay, that's how you recognize bad edges. So there are 5 different cases you can get in terms of how many bad edges you have. You can either have 0, in which case you skip the EO step and you just need to solve DF and DB. There's 2, there's 4, there's 6, and there's 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a series of triggers. I'm going to show you a couple of triggers. I'm going to show you one trigger for 2 bad edges that you can set up to, and 2 triggers for 4 bad edges. And then for what you will do is you'll solve any EO case with a combination of these. So for 2 and 4, you just do the triggers for those. For 6, you can do 4 then 2 or 2 then 4. And for 8, you can do 4 and 4. So the first trigger is for 2 bad edges. I'm going to show you it like this. Here you have 2 bad edges. So obviously these are all good because they're solved. This is solved. And these 3 are good because they match the correct center. These 2 are not, because if you see, you line it up, it doesn't match the side center. And this one, if you line it up, it doesn't match the correct center on top or the opposite center. So you've got a 2 here. These are actually in the correct position, because what you can do is you can just do F prime, U prime, F. And that will always flip 2 bad edges. So here you can see this one's bad and this one is also bad. If you set it up here, you can do F prime, U prime, F, and now they're good. You can also do F prime, U, F to fix a bad edge here and here. And you can also do this at the back. So you can do B, U, B prime to fix this and this as bad, if they're bad. And you can also do B, U prime, B prime if to fix this and this. So what you would do if you had a 2 bad edge case is you'd set up to that. So I'm just going to set up a case with 2 bad edges. So here we have a 2 bad edge case. So, because these are all correct, these 2 are correct, this one's correct, but these 2 are bad. Now, you actually, here what you have to do is you have to set them up. So one is in the side and one is in the top. Here, one's in the side already, so that's fine. But this one is in the bottom. You have to get into the top. So you can just do either an M2 or an RY2. I'd do an RY2 because generally RY2s are better than M2s. So now, once you've done RY2, the bad edge that was here is now here. The bad edge that was there is now here. So you've got one in the side and one in the top. You can then just do a U to bring it to there and do F prime, U prime, F. And the edge is now good because you've done the trigger that fixes the 2 bad edges. The next trigger I'm going to show you is the first 4 bad edge trigger. And it's another, these are all 3 move triggers as well, so they're really easy. This one is if you have a bad edge in if the 3 front edges are bad, and the UL edge is bad, you can do RU R prime. That's RY U R prime, sorry. And it solves the bad edges, because you can see this one's bad because it doesn't match up. This one's bad because if you do an R, it doesn't match up. This one's bad because if you do a U prime, it doesn't match up. And this one's bad because if you do this, because it doesn't match up. So here, in this case, when these are the bad edges, you can solve them by doing R, R wide, U, R prime. This can also, you could do, it doesn't really matter which way you do it, it solves the same bad edges, but you can also mirror this, on the back, so you can do R wide prime, U, R wide, or R wide prime, U prime, or R wide prime, U prime, R wide. So here, you can see, it just solves the back and this one here. Now, how you would do it in solve is you would set up to that solve, or a quick example of a 4 bad edge case. So here, in this case, you can see we have a bad edge here, because to match up, bad edge here, and a bad edge here. So you've actually already got 3 bad edges in the back that can be solved with, and those bad edges would be solved with the RY prime, U prime, RY trigger. But you have to get another one here. Now, there's a few ways you could do this. You could put you could put this edge up like this, take it out, and do a U prime and R prime to do that without disrupting that, and that actually puts them next to each other. The best way I find is basically if you find one of the edges in the top, you can match it up. So if you do R, U, R prime or something and take it out, it's next to it. So then they can just be, you can just do an AUF to set up to this case. Another thing you can do is you can do set up this, say to, you can do like R prime, U prime, R prime. So you're actually replacing these bad edges. That also puts it into place for the RY prime, U, RY trigger. And the final, there's one more case, which is the only other problem is if one of your bad edges is down here, obviously you don't want to do a RY2 or an M2 like with the 2 bad edge case, because that would put them both in the top layer, which would mean you couldn't do this trigger. So you can do either R wide, U2, RY prime, which would swap these edges, but also these edges. Or you could do, yeah, so if you swap that would swap these 2 edges, if you do R wide, U2, RY prime. So that solves that. And then you can just set them up. In this case, you can just do a U2 to put them here, and then do the trigger. So if any of you have done the roux method, you know you can do, with this arrow case, you can orient 4 edges with M prime U or U prime M, and that orients edges. If you've got 4 edges like this, normally in this case, in LEOR, you could also just do R prime, and then it would, and then you're set up to the previous case with the previous 4-move trigger. So there's not a huge amount of point in teaching that, but what a lot of people don't realize is you can actually, if you do that case, but from the side, suddenly it's really helpful if you have a bad edge down here, because obviously otherwise you'd have to set it up to this, which would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves, which you don't want to have to do. So if you've got a bad edge in DR, you can then make sure you have the other 3 bad edges set up like this. So then you have the 3 bad edges all next to each other in kind of a crescent on the top. And then the 1 bad edge in DR, and you can do S, and then a U or a U prime, and then S prime. Like this. So S, U prime, S prime. So an example, I'll do a quick example of where I would use this in the solve. So here you can see we have 4 bad edges, one here, one here, one here, and one here. But none of them are in DF or DB. So DF or DB takes, to put one of them there, I would most likely have to do something like that, which is 3 moves, or so, or something like that, which moves loads of edges about and can be confusing for look ahead and stuff, and tracking. So we don't want to do that. So in this case, what I would do is I can set up this one of these edges to the DR spot, and then do the full move trigger. Now I could just do an R, but then that puts this down here. So instead, and then we couldn't do that. So we want to move that out of the way to make sure a good edge is going down here. So we do a U2R. So then all of these are good edges, and this one's bad. And then do another U2 to set up the 3 bad edges in UF, UR, and UB. And then just do S, U, S prime. And that would orient that. So to go back to the original scramble, which I showed you how to find bad edges on. Let's see how. So we had 6 bad edges. So we had bad edges. We have a bad edge here, 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 and here. So there are a few ways we can do this. The first I see immediately is if I do an R prime, there's 3 bad edges here and a bad edge here. So that sets up to the S, U, S prime trigger. That then leaves us with 2, but they're both in the bottom, and there's not, and that's not so good. So we do an RY2 to move them out. I do U prime, R prime to set one up to the right, and the other one is in the correct position for F prime, U prime, F. But that's not the best. So instead, what else could we do? That had the problem, although the way we solved the first 4 edges was good, that left us with 2 in the bottom, which is generally a bad situation. Another thing what we can do is we can do U, R, U, R prime, and then we do the 4 bad edges trigger at the back. R prime, R wide prime, U prime, R wide, and that solves these 4. And then that just leaves us with these 2 as the bad edges. So once again, we'd have to do an RY2, and that puts them both in the back, but then it just sets us, we can just do a U and do the B, U prime, B prime trigger to orient these 2. I realise, but 6 hat bad edges are often bad cases because you have to do a lot of setup moves, because there's not usually not a smooth way of doing them, but that's just how I would solve those cases. So I haven't really covered how to solve DFDB after solving the EO, so I'll quickly go over that now. So we'll set up to the case we had before, and then let's just do what I'd immediately do, which is R prime, S, U, S prime, RY2, U prime, R prime, F prime, U prime, F. And that orients the bad edges. What you then need to do is you need to try and solve DFDB edges. The first thing you should do is where they are, see where they are. They're here and here in this case. Now, what you can always do is if you position it directly above where it needs to go, you can do RI prime U2R, and it will place it in. You can then set it up, the other one up, into the same position. So here I'd have to do R prime U to put it above. is you can go R prime U and do R wide U2 R prime. Now, this is kind of bad. This isn't always the best. Another thing you can do is, while this is up, if it's in if it's in L, if it's in the on the UL edge, you can do R wide 2 with the center to match it up to the center. And then you can do U to match it up with the correct center, so it's now solved relative to the centers. And in this one, you can see we're doing R. If you did an R wide 2, is then in the position for R wide prime U2 R. Some of you will have seen that when you're in this position, you can actually cancel a move to do R wide U2 R wide, and it just solves. So in this position, the way I do it is I would do R wide 2 U, R wide U2 R wide. Another thing you can, and a few other things, is if you have, if you say have it in the L layer, you can do an M2, or sorry, in the if you have it in the UR spot, you can do an M2 to pair it up with the center. And you can do the same thing here, where you can go U prime R U2 R wide, except it's opposite here. And if you've got them solved but opposite each other, you can just do R wide 2 U2 R wide 2. So they're basically the main triggers you need to learn. The final other one is if you have it solved down here, like this, kind of have this T shape on the bottom, and you have the something like this or the edge like this in the DR position. You can then set this other edge up into the UL position, and if you do R wide 2, and then a U or a U prime, whichever one matches up with the center, and then R wide 2, that solves them. That's a fairly easy step. That's just be creative, and see how you can influence it. Sometimes in EO, say you've got this for R U R prime trigger, you can see if you do R U prime R prime, it doesn't solve the edge, but if you do R U R prime, it solves the edge. That sort of thing is helpful. That's basically the main thing with this. So I'm not going to teach last layer in this tutorial, because I'm assuming you already know it. If you don't, you can just use the algorithms from To-Look Last layer in CFOP. I will link those in the description, because you will always have a cross-solved. But I'm going to teach right block. Now, you can get right block specific scrambles on CS Timer, which are really helpful for practice. They're RU only, so if you go to 3x3, so if you go to CS Timer, scroll down to Special on the main set, go to 3x3 subsets here. I don't know if you can see it that well. I'll just hold it. So if you go down to Special and go to 3x3 subsets, click on that, and then go over here. 2 generator RU is the first one, and that'll give you right blocks. Right block only scrambles. So then we'll do this one on the top. Okay. Now the thing you've got to do is you have to solve pairs. Now, in this case, a pair can either be an F2L pair, like this. We have one already solved. But it could also be It can also be a pair like this, where the center, the edge is connected. The edge that goes in DR is connected to one of either the DFR or DBR corners, like this. So that's also a pair. So you want to make either this or this. Now, once you've done that,
if you've made this corner one of these pairs, what you want to try and do is you want to pair it up with the edge that goes in DR, and then just do and then just put them in, and then do the final pair like a normal CFOP or ZC pair. So here you would do, the best thing to do would be R2 to insert that edge, and then just U prime R prime to solve the pair. Sometimes, depending on where the pair is, you can actually cancel. So here you can go, while inserting this edge, you can go U prime, R prime, U prime, R prime. So as I said, here what I would do is I would just, because I've got a pair ready, I would just go R2, U prime, R prime. I would then just solve the other pair as normal. R prime, U, R prime, U, R, U prime, R prime, U, R. In this case, where I have a pair like this, I would, I want to do is I want to pair it up with the corresponding edge, like the F2L edge. So what I would do here is if I see, so here what I'd have to do is I'd have to do UR, U2, and then that pairs them up. Because you want it to be opposite. If it's in the correct place, obviously you have to do an R2 to insert this. So that actually unsolves that. So you actually want to place the edge in opposite from where it is here. So here you'd go. So then you could just pair the pair up like this. So here it's like, if you could do an R to solve the edge, but you don't want that, you want it opposite, so you do an R prime and just U2, R2. If you do have a case where you have the pair solved but the edge in the opposite position, you can just do R2, U prime, R2, U, R2. And that'll solve it. And then you just do the pair as normal. Obviously, you won't always have a pair solved. So then what you want to do is you want to see how you can make a pair. Here, I can actually do a U2, and it'll make a pair like this. And then I can just do R, U2, to pair them up, and then R to insert. The other thing you can do is if you want to pair, if you've got, say, a pair like this, there are a few ways of doing it. If you see here, I could do an R2 to pair them up. I'd have to pair it up with this edge, so I'd have to U prime, R, U, R prime, U prime, R2, U, R2. And if there's no way of making like a one-move pair, the best way to look for a one-move pair is just learn all the different combinations of how you can just do like one move and just recognize it and just do a bunch of right block scrambles, have a look. But another thing you can do is if you've got two pieces opposite like this, so they're oriented correctly but they're opposite, you can just do R, U2, R prime. If you've got something like this, you can do R, U, R to... If you've got something like this where if you have something like this where if you just did an R prime to try and orient it, it would be not matched up. That usually means you need to do an R twice. Well, you need to do an R so it's kind of one move away, and then do UR again to match it up. The best way with right block is just do a lot of experimentation and seeing how you can be efficient. I think I'll do some LEOR example solves in the future, and then I'll link them in the description. That sort of thing will probably help with looking through being efficient. I might do like an average of 12 or something and try and reconstruct it. No promises though, because my upload schedule is really crap, so that might be in like 4 months. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of LEOR. I've got an example solve after this. And if you've got any comments at all, I will answer all of them in the description. I know I've probably not done the best at explaining this. My first proper tutorial.